Hello, welcome back. Today I want to talk about a game that I played in recent Northumberland Congress. I was playing against an Icelandic grandmaster called Kjartssonn, quite a young guy, pretty talented player. And it's an interesting game because it's a demonstration of how you can think pessimistically in the opening, because as we'll see, I misassessed the position. Yeah, I think c4 is a decent try. Now, why does black play c4? Actually, it's quite a clever idea. The idea is to clamp down on his pawn, on his square on d3, right? So white's plan of going bishop d3 looks weird because you're blocking the bishop on c1, but the idea is to go c3, drop the bishop out, and then play d4. So if you play a move like e6, then white gets what he was aiming for, or he or she was aiming for, which is to play this move d4. Then you get this ideal centre. Of course, black isn't too bad here. They can play bishop e7, or they can trade. Play moves like rook c8. It's also playable for black. But at least white gets, that is the strategic idea. But funnily enough, in this position, the main move is to move c4, which I wasn't aware of. So even though I did a course on this recently, video course on this opening with bishop e5 check, I feel like having practical experience of that opening over the board is makes such a massive difference. I didn't have that for this game. So it continued like this, and this was the second game of the day, and he played queen c7, and I felt very tired of the board. I was point clear. I should have been thinking. I went for a meal before the game, because you get a break of about an hour and a half between the first game and the game against Gudmundsson, which I believe started about 5 o'clock. First game started about 12. Had a break, had some food, came back, and was confronted with this very tricky, tough opponent who's clearly going to try and beat me, even with black. It was similar kind of rating. But I looked at this position. I thought I don't like this position at all, because the move I want to play is d4, which is clearly which is the move I played in the game. And we got to this position, and I misassessed the position. I thought that white is doing very badly. Now, black could play bishop e7 and castles here without anything nasty happening. It's probably he will have a strategically won game, because the pawn on c3 is very weak. The pawn on e4 is very weak long term. White position looks like a mess. But the problem is, in the short term, black has development issues. I'm clearly threatening to take his pawn on a6, so he played knight c5. And this is where I kind of got bluffed out, because the best move is to take. And I saw variations like this, and bishop takes e4, and I kind of stopped there, and I thought, well, this doesn't look very good. You know, I don't even really have a trick like rook e4, knight e4, queen a4, because they could just go queen c6. I go knight b5, so what? I missed the idea, actually, that I could play in this position. I saw moves like rook b4, but then I thought you could just take on c3, possibly. Or maybe take on f3 or move the bishop. What I missed here was this move, rook b6, which is a really effective move. And now the position for black is suddenly quite awkward. You're a couple of moves away from getting your king into safety. It's very interesting here, and I think it shows how in chess it pays to be an optimist, how it pays to look for ideas for yourself, not think about the position in a negative way, not, you know, worry too much about what your opponent's doing, also focus on your own ideas, on your own possibilities. The problem is, I'm kind of a negative person in life, and that can filter through to the chess at times. And I came to realise after this game that I'm thinking in too negative a way. So rook b6 is a very powerful move. Suddenly threatening moves like knight b5. White doesn't worry about the capture on f3 because suddenly the king is actually fairly safe now. And now I'm free to go play moves like knight b5 and attack this pawn on d6. So looking quite awkward for black. So I didn't really calculate this line very well. I felt very tired, and I went knight d2, which I felt was just about keeping my position together. It wasn't a very good move. During the game I was worried about the move knight a4, threatening to take on c3, but bishop b2. My opponent admitted after the game he wasn't sure about this, and he's right, it's not that clear. So he continued with bishop e7, which is quite a fairly good move. And we got this position, and again I felt like I was just scrapping to stay alive. I felt this position was very bad. I was very concerned that once my opponent consolidated position, I would just lose the game. Very negative way to think. I went knight f5, which is a good move because I needed to defend e4. For tactical reasons, he couldn't really have taken on e4 last move, so he decided to castle. I went knight f5. Certainly this knight is now quite a good attacking piece, attacking e7. Of course, queen defended it. My opponent played move d5, which actually turned out to be an error. It looks like a very natural move. It was a move that I was most worried about in the game, but it does open up this bishop suddenly coming towards the king. So there is some kind of risk involved. The idea is after d5, if I take on d5, it's going to take out the knight. And hit the square. And if you take on e5, there's going to be d3. It's going to be hanging at the end. It's kind of a mess, but maybe not a mess that favours white anyway. c3 is also weak in that variation once he takes back with the knight. So he could also insert knight d3 and then knight d5 is also a possibility. Although then there's some kind of rook b7, queen d5 idea, so that probably wouldn't quite work. But yeah, I understood his idea of d5. He's trying to open up a position where my pieces are looking like a bit of a mess. But he's also not ahead in development anymore. You know, knight f5 is quite dangerously placed. I played the move bishop a3, which is a good move, and now he made a fatal error. He took on e4, which I did not punish. So again, you know, you might even want to pause the video at this point and try and work out what white should play. There's only one winning line now for white. So I started with the correct move, which is knight e7. He took back. And this is where the computer points out a very nice possibility that I missed. So I consider moves like bishop c2, but apparently they're not that effective. With the idea of trying to bring the knight to b3. The move I should have played, which I didn't consider. Well, actually, I'll show you what I played in the game first. What I did was I took there, which was quite a bad move. And the reason I did that was partly because, so I saw this position in my calculations. I thought, right, I can hold this. I can make a draw now. I was thinking negatively. I was thinking, right, I'm going to make a draw. This game will end in a draw. You know, and partly that was based on his misassessment earlier. I thought I was worse earlier. So mentally I was like, if I can get a draw out of this game where I was in big trouble at the opening because of this misassessment, rather than thinking optimistically and thinking, actually, let's just go for it. Let's go for the win. Let's try and finish this tournament here and now. If I beat this guy, he's like the top seed, right? I'm the second seed, but I'm a point ahead. If I win this game, I've more or less got the tournament in the back. You know, I've still got to play Keith and maybe one or two others, but he's, you know, looking very good for me. But instead, I was thinking negatively. And in fact, he did end up catching me up in the tournament in the end because he won like 2 games at the end. I drew like maybe too many, and so we ended up tying for first with 7 out of 9. Still a good result, but could have been even better. So I saw this, and yeah, eventually the game ended in a draw. He's actually better here. But if we go back to this position, very interesting possibility the computer pointed out that I hadn't even considered. So again, I think it really pays to be an optimist in chess because you see more possibilities. Magnus Carlsen talked about this before, and he said that, you know, in chess he considers himself an optimist. And maybe that's often why he'll keep fighting, he'll keep looking for possibilities, because in chess there's always something to look for, even in the most dry and arid of positions. But if you're thinking optimistically, you're finding possibilities for yourself. And here I could have played a move bishop c4, which I didn't even consider. Very, very strong move. The computer points out. I didn't even consider this move. So it controls d5. Obviously the threat is now to put the knight on b3, creating this huge pressure down his diagonal. The more you look at his position objectively, the more you realise actually it's obviously a good position for white. You know, yes, white's a pawn down, but it's only one pawn. These bishops are very, very effective in a fairly open position. Yeah, I think if you had more time, if I had more energy, and I was actually thinking optimistically, I might have found this move bishop c4, or I might assess this position a bit better than I did. So yeah, it's very hard for black to defend now. I mean, if you play a move like rook here, I'm probably just going to go, well, I guess knight b3, and probably a move like rook d1 would be very powerful, but suddenly threatening to take on d7. I mean, I think the most testing move that black can play here is queen d7, which kind of underpins this knight. So you're now threatening rook to d8. Or you're not threatening it, but you're intending rook d8, which would free the knight from the pin. And then the knight could later go to e6 or d3 or even a4. But apparently after queen d7, there's only one winning move, which is rook to d1, which actually is a fairly obvious move because you're threatening to move the knight to e4. So that probably wouldn't be as difficult to find as bishop c4, but it is the only winning move. So it's entirely possible that I might have got as far as bishop c4 and after queen d7 not found rook d1. But a very interesting position. I didn't realise that this whole position was bristling with complications. It's interesting after d takes e4, a few players pointed out that white could even, like Kjartssonn for example, white could even take on b7. Again, just shows the possibilities that exist in chess. I didn't even consider that possibility. Amazing possibility that the computer also points out. Not as strong as this idea of taking on e7 and going bishop c4, but very interesting. So the idea is if you take on b7 with a knight, obviously I'm going to take on e7, hitting the rook, hitting the king, so the king has to move, the rook is going to drop. I mean, black will take on d3 in these variations, but you're dropping a lot of pieces in the meantime. So queen b7, and then bishop a6, another very interesting possibility. I didn't even consider this. The queen is attacking a6, but if the queen takes on a6, you drop e7, and then you're gonna regain your material and probably be a pawn up. So very interesting possibility as well. The computer assesses that position as clearly better for white, but after knight e7 and bishop c4, the computer says that white is already winning. So, yeah, I think that's a good demonstration of why it pays to be an optimist in chess. And I think I need to go out and buy some self-help books and stuff like, you know, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Books like that, because I think that would probably help my chess a lot. Anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video, and there should be more content to come.